Good.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Hi, Paul. Nice to see you again, mate.
Yeah. So, for anyone watching, Steve was the lead singer of the Fast Cars, and I saw something on the internet, and Shaun Ryder said that you were his hero when he was
Yeah.
growing up.
Well, it goes back that far. Shaun came to support a big charity festival that was running, G Festival, and it took me by surprise with his comment. But his brother Paul had already said previously that we were a big inspiration to them,
Yeah.
which is all quite something because they actually saw us play, or Paul saw us play at Ambrose Barlow School. This is we
Oh, did
used
you
to,
play there?
yeah, well, we
Yeah.
we because like. I was like 17 when I started with the band, but a lot of people got into the punk thing. They couldn't come and see because they were like 12 and 13, so they couldn't go to gigs. So as we became more and more established and we started doing like youth clubs and schools and stuff like that, and it was good for us and also great that the kids got a chance to see us. So, but
How
yeah,
did you how did you get into punk?
I reckon I was possibly the first punk in Swinton. I Oh, because I'd left school in '76, and it was a great summer course, and then I started working, and I absolutely hated my job. I really was pretty down with it. I was already in a band with school and everything, and I'd lost a little bit of interest because it was a lot of prog rock around and stuff like that. Bowie and the
Yeah.
Glam era had kind of finished. Dr. Feelgood were like the only band that had a bit of balls. I thought, oh, they're great, and I saw it as an advert for the Sex Pistols playing at Free Trade Hall, but I didn't go. I was still only 16, but I was intrigued by the way it looked, and I'd heard a little bit about them. And then deep in 1976, in December, I was sat in my bedroom, and this song came on my little transistor radio. I remember the moment because it was a life-changing moment, and this
Yeah.
song just burst out of the radio. I think, what the hell is that? It just stirred me up so much, and it was Anarchy in the UK. It was just like,
Yeah.
wow, this is what I want to do. And from that moment, I'd say I'd been in a band, but it changed my whole perspective of what I wanted to do. And I wanted to get the lads I was at school with to put a band together and start doing this kind of thing. And I was writing songs, but I couldn't convince the lads I was with at school to actually do it. So that was pretty disappointing that I was writing songs and had no outlet initially. So I answered an advert in one of the music shops, punk band looking for a singer. So
Oh,
I,
so it's like an advert in a music shop.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
how a lot of these things start, I think, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it was an advert in a music shop, and I answered that, and I spoke to a guy called Mark, and they were rehearsing over in Wythenshawe. So went over, got two buses into town, out of town to St. Bernadette's Church in Wythenshawe, which apparently was the same place where Slaughter the Dogs used to rehearse.
Yeah.
Did this little audition, and I was off to join the band, and Mark turned out to be a guy called Mark Riley, who now
All right.
who now runs he's on
Yeah.
Six and promotes all the new bands and what have you.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
yeah, and he was in
Yeah.
the Fall, and the other members of the band also became members of the Fall, like Craig Scanlon and then Steve Hanley. So my first band, although I joined it as the singer, all the members became members of the Fall late that year. So
Oh, wow, I never knew that.
yeah, it's a big part of the history of fast cars, but we only had one gig. We had the band was called the Sirens, and we only had one gig at Pips, and it was great, but chaotic. We weren't great players at the time, but we had songs. Mark was a decent songwriter. I was a decent songwriter, and we were doing a couple of Velvet Underground covers and stuff. But it's I felt like I needed to move on to maybe a slightly better band, which was probably a mistake. Um, because I think it was a very earthy kind of feel. But we actually moved on. The lads I was with at school, and my brother being the main one, was interested in putting a band together with me. And this was like late '77 now, So
Yeah.
we did that, and we again we advertised them for members, and a couple of people come down for auditions and stuff, and we ended up going back to our original drummer. So it was me and Stuart brought in Tony from the original band at school, and and a lad called Aidan Jones joined us on guitar, and we started rehearsing at TGM Studios
Yeah.
in Manchester, which is an iconic place where all the other bands, including Buzzcocks, Slaughter and the Dogs, Joy Division, Chris Seavey, everybody was rehearsing there, and we started to rehearse and work towards our first gigs, which came.
You would have known them, wouldn't you? Did you get to know the Buzzcocks?
We got to, everybody kept themselves because there was huge rivalry, you know.
Was
So
it?
yeah, you know, the Buzzcocks had semi-made it by then. You know, they were very big on the underground scene. Probably hadn't had a hit at that point, but they were certainly going that way, you know. And Joy Division were getting interest from Factory and people. Well, probably not Factory at that point, but just getting a little bit of interest around what they were doing because it was a little bit different. And then, yeah, then we started our residency then in Swinton, which was a place called the Butchers in Swinton, and we started off there March '78, I think it was, and then the scene was going on. It was happening, you know. So within 9 months, we were co-headlining Salford Tech with Joy Division and Ed Banger, you know. So it was
Oh,
it was that fast how things
yeah.
moved from rehearsing in January or auditioning to first gig in March to being fully fledged members of the scene by the end of 1978, you know. And yeah, it was incredible. We were playing support to lots of big bands, including the Buzzcocks and the Rosillos, and we never supported Joy Division. We played with them a couple of times. We played with Mick Hucknall and his band, the Frantic Elevators, you know. But
Oh, wow. I forgot he was in the band before.
yeah. They weren't great, the Frantic Elevators, and you couldn't tell he was a great singer at that time because he was
Yeah.
just shouting. We were all shouting, you know.
Yeah.
But Fast Cars, I always felt we had some decent tunes. You know, we were like more like the Buzzcocks Ramones style of playing it, or certainly writing within our tunes. But maybe the guitar was a little bit too heavy rock and whatever, you know. So it detracted a little bit from what we were doing because a lot of other bands did withhold on how good they were, whereas the guys in our band were all ex sort of rock fans and they wanted to show off how good they were. So it made
Yeah.
it sound a little different, you know, which became a good thing. But we got lots of brilliant reviews, but often people weren't too sure what we were. You know,
Yeah.
the identity was a little bit lost because I was clear up for. Although I didn't have spiky hair, I was clearly into the punk ethos, and the songs were all three chord, big sort of hooky songs about girls and cars and shit and
Yeah.
generally a bit of, you know, it touched everything. One of the biggest songs we had online as things developed later on was a song about depression, teenage depression. It's mad how big that song became. You know, it was a bit of a throwaway at the time, but yeah, it all came to fruition, and we had quite a career for nearly 3 years, the initial career, you know. So
Did you get anywhere near the charts with any singles?
no, the nearest we only had one single during the actual time we were doing things. You know, we had a couple of tracks on a compilation album which was called Manchester Collection. And that was a collective of all the bands around Manchester, including the likes of Frantic Elevators and stuff. And well, that they didn't get on the album because they weren't quite good enough. But
Yeah.
that was our first recording. It was a demo that was released that was mid '79, maybe about August or something. So you know things were starting to happen by then, and there were record companies sniffing around, and I was doing a lot of chasing up and what have you. But the only single I was a track called "The Kids Just Want to Dance," which made the alternative charts at the time. But years later, as the story developed into the '90s, we found out it had come a bit of a cult hit, you know, and yeah. So that was when the website was put together. Everything started to become, you know, because obviously you had no idea how far things had gone because you'd just done that record and that was it. But once the internet came into being, then the whole world was listening and watching.
Yeah.
Very, very early days of that. But as soon as we put a website together, we were invited to go and play in Japan, you know, which was just blew us away, really. And our second
So you
career.
had fans in Japan?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we sold out 2 shows.
Did you?
Yeah. In Tokyo, in the first time we went, and we went again in 2007, and that was a little tour, and yeah, they were all sellout shows, and it was mad that the kids were singing this song I wrote in my mum's house, singing this song back to us, and
While they were singing it back to you.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's absolutely nuts, yeah. So if you get a chance to check the website out with a bit of time, and there's all sorts of footage of the very early days from the 70s right through to recent stuff, and let's say the gigs we did in Japan, the gigs we did in Germany and stuff, But yeah, it all started back in Manchester in the late 70s. The scene was as exciting as people think it was. I was lucky enough to be a late teenager and was in it as a fan and as a member of a band. It was like, wow.
Was you were on Granada, weren't you?
Yeah, we did Granada reports, which was brilliant because Tony Wilson wasn't a fan of ours. He saw us play several times, and I mithered him a number of times about trying to do stuff with him, but he didn't like what we did because it was a little bit too traditional. He was looking for something a bit more different. So he kind of held us back a little bit, and he wouldn't put us on the TV. And we
Yeah.
got on Granada within 2 weeks of him stopping producing it. It was
Yeah.
a guy called Dick Witts was a big fan of ours, part of the Musicians Collective.
What was he called?
Dick Witts. I know, slightly unfortunate.
You just made that up.
No, that was his name. That was his name. He's about 4'6" as well. But yeah, he was
Everyone will Google that now, won't they?
Dick.
Anyone who's watching, Dick
Yeah,
Witts.
yeah. But he was the one that got us onto the TV, which was brilliant. But little story about that was when we were in the in the studio and everything. They said, right, lads, go off and get changed. So we're like, used to like getting changed in toilets and stuff like that and doing gigs. So they're all panicking, looking around for us. They can't find us anywhere. Where's that band gone? They're not in the change room anywhere. And we were in the toilets. And the coronation people are coming in and out, and we're in there like getting changed. It's like, oh, nuts.
You got described, what was it, Pericomo?
Oh, what did it say? Oh, it's about some saving energy. When I make Perry Como look like, oh, no, Magnus Pike. Magnus
Yeah.
Pike. Yeah, wasn't he? So I said, I made Magnus Pike look like Perry Como, who's a proper lounge. Which, yeah, I used to enjoy burning my energy up and getting the crowd involved and all that. It was, that's why the song "The Kids Just Want to Dance" was all about that kind of thing. We used to say do this residency at the Butchers in Swinton, and towards the end, it used to get packed out every Saturday night, and it just got rowdier and rowdier to a point that one night everything got knocked over and what have you. And the landlord said, "Oh, that's it. We're just going to call it a day." So the song "The Kids Just Want to Dance" was about those times, about everybody dancing. There was no trouble, there was no mither, but it looked like there could have been, but it wasn't. It was just loads of teenagers having loads of fun, and that's why the record connected. I think it's. I think it could have been a hit in the day, but when we recorded it, it sounded to me like a hit record. I was like, wow, this is exactly what we've been aiming to try and do. But when we got the test pressings back, it was. It wasn't. I don't think it was. I think the test pressing stage we missed out because we did a really cheap. Or it was only like on an independent record label, so it was. They went for the cheapest possible pressing, and when we got the pressings back, it was marginally too fast. And I
Yeah.
listened to it and I thought, that's not the record. That's too fast. Sounded a little bit tinny. My vocal was a little bit squeaky. Everything wasn't quite right. And I was just so gutted that I thought we'd made a hit record. And when I listened to it, I knew that it wasn't.
Yeah, just slightly out.
It,
What was the
it,
record label?
it was called Streets Ahead, the
Yeah.
label. It was a little record shop in Altrincham, and he wanted to put this label together. And we did still get it played on John Peel and stuff. And we even got onto daytime radio on, which was virtually unheard of an unknown band. But it was only on a feature thing on Peter Powell. And when he played it, it sounded great, but I knew it was too fast and still thinking, oh shit. And as it finished, Peter Powell said, "Oh, that was fast cars, the opposite word being fast." And I was just like, my heart just sunk. And it didn't get played again on Radio 1. It did get played on John Peel's show in the nighttime, but didn't get another daytime play. And I think had it been that few BPM slower, It's
Yeah.
so much bigger and more mature, and it could have been a hit. Very nearly got signed to Polydor, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out. But and we were A&M Records were very interested in us, but to take that leap is massive. I was kind of managing us as well. I was still only like 19-year-old, and I was like the one that was knocking on record company doors, telling them how good we were and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
What
yeah,
what
great
what
time.
was the punk scene at the time in Manchester? What were the clubs like, or did people mainly go to gigs?
Um, it was more gigs and because the gigs were clubs really. It was both the same thing. So my very first punk gig was at a place called oh God, what's it called? The Barlow. It was on Barlow Road in Charlton, and they were the first pub to be putting on punk bands. I saw the
Yeah.
Buzzcocks there, saw Slaughter the Dogs there, even saw the adverts there. It became a chart
Oh,
as well,
yeah.
so that was a bit special. But I didn't go to Electric Circus, and I never kind of, it just seemed a bit too far away. I didn't quite know where it was or anything. I was still 16 and a half, 17, really, but I did go to the Russell Club an awful lot, which was right in the middle of Hume anyway, so that was no easier to get to than the Electric Circus, and that was basically an old working men's club right in the centre of Hume, and used to go down there watching bands and often walk home or walk right, through Hume, through Salford, all the way back to my mum's in Pendlebury, but
All the way from Hume.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the scene was brilliant. Everyone like got on. There's one or two shady characters in it, but for the most part, everyone was like really good humoured, And initially, I was watching bands, but soon I got to know who the promoter was, and we started getting the odd little support slot down there and everything. So it became a place. Russell Club eventually became the factory, but it did start out as a Russell Club, and it always kept that name on it. And we played there with several people. One of the most memorable ones was playing with a band called Dillinger, who were a big reggae band at the time.
Yeah.
Song called Cocaine Running Round My Brain was their big song.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was one of the
They
few,
played that.
yeah, one of the few
Yeah.
UK gigs he did, and we supported them there, and we were in the back. We were the only white guys in the place virtually, so
Yeah.
it's fantastic. But again, there was that connection between sort of blacks and punks, and it was the reggae and the punk music was a bit of a crossover. The Clash were big kind of supporters of that, and he even mentioned Dillinger in the White Man Hammersmith Palais song, so. But yeah, it was brilliant. We would say these young white kids in this change room with all these proper black Jamaican guys all smoking ganja and everything like that. So you can barely see each other in the back of the changing rooms. But yeah, great experiences. And that was a nice thing of the whole thing crossing over, So we did other support gigs along the way, but and we finished up, at the Apollo was our last gig, or second to last gig. So that's how
Yeah.
it progressed through year on year, and the scene was great and became, pretty well known in it, and we hung around with a lot of the other bands, that were on the cusp of making it, hung around with a lot of the people that were regular goers to the gigs, and Gordon the Moor. I don't know if you remember Jilted John's single.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Gordon the Moor became a big sort of compare. So he often like compared our gigs, and then we became friendly with him and what have you. And a guy, yeah, that was on Rabid Records, and then eventually a guy from Rabid, although they didn't sign us, did well, one of the guys who was there did decide he wanted to manage us and try and get us like a big deal. So yeah, that was when things started to change again. We did some recording at that point then in Strawberry Studios.
Yeah.
Um, it was actually during the downtime, Joy Division were recording Unknown Pleasures with,
Yeah.
with Martin Hanna, and they were doing daytimes, and there was sort of downtime at night. So we managed to get 3 evenings in there when, as Joy Division were finishing, we'd come in and we'd do our little bit, So often played pool with them during the changeover time and stuff, and said we rehearsed in the same place as them at TJM. We rehearsed with them also down in Salford. And there's a little story about Peter Hook when we was in Salford.
Yeah, go on, tell us.
Yeah, when we were rehearsing, I come outside and I had like a Ford Escort, but then they used the catch for the bonnet was outside on the front, and I
Yeah.
couldn't start the car and it wouldn't start. Anyway, so lift up the bonnet and I see them flipping. Someone stolen the battery. They've just cut through the wires and stolen the battery. And the Peter Hook comes down and said, "Mate, do you want I'll give you a push, give you a start." I said, "No, mate." Said the battery's gone. The battery said, "No worries, we'll get a couple of hours. We'll get it started." I said, "No, the battery's gone." Somebody stole it. So he was just laughing with us, and then he got off. He had a big old flipping clumsy Jag at the time, So, but yeah, they were. They didn't actually make it big in the day, really. I don't think it all came afterwards. I think sure.
When did it come out? I was trying to tell someone the other day, and I can't remember. Did they get big in
No,
the early
not really.
20s?
No,
Or
the Love Will Tear Us Apart was a minor hit.
did it get in the charts? Or
I think it got top 20 maybe, but it was as a result of I think it's a brilliant song. I love it, but I think a lot of the publicity came because the hit came shortly after Ian had hung himself,
yeah,
so a
yeah,
lot of it did come on the back of that, which often is the case, isn't it? It takes a major event like that for someone to become a legend or a hero,
yeah,
So I, he was the nicest guy of all of them, to be fair, which he had this really odd manner on stage. Let's say, it looked like he was having some kind of fit or whatever, and it did turn out he did have epilepsy, and that's how he
yeah,
performed. But as a guy, he was the most mellow and nicest of them all. They were all pretty quiet guys, really. Hooky was the one that spoke out the most, I guess, but that's Salford, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. They're seen as like the Gothic darlings, but I always think they're probably more like Salford lads, aren't they?
yeah. Because certainly like so Hooky and Bernard were from Salford, and then they recruited. Ian came from Macclesfield, and I'm not sure about the drummers, but yeah, they were just different. I didn't quite understand what they were trying to do, but that's
Yeah,
and I still don't completely get it now. I've gone back and listened to it, but the production made them sound great, and his lyrics are really deep and clever, So for me, they were quite unique because nobody had really. They were still very much novice in how they played, yet
yeah,
they were taking on sort of very grown up topics. So
yeah,
they
yeah,
came out with this sound that was very, very different, and then it was that was partly the reason, but all they were following the Bowie kind of route of low. Um, and I was a massive Bowie fan, but when he got to that got a little bit arty for me. Couldn't quite understand it. I was more into his upfront sort of rock and roll kind of glam days, really, but yeah, we were all sort of learning and developing that. That was the great thing, No, there was no rules. You could do what you wanted to do, and
yeah,
that
yeah,
was the great thing. Ours was very much a do-it-yourself sort of punk pop thing, probably didn't sound so much do it yourself because the way the lads played, but it we were probably more honest in many ways than other bands were. They were just,
yeah,
masking what they're about, where we were just honestly and just did what we did, So yeah, it's all
yeah.
good times.
Um, just coming near the end now, Steve. You've already given us one track, haven't you? I've been ending these with pick your favourite track from the era, from the punk era.
Apart from our song.
Yeah,
It has to be Anarchy in the UK because I say that was the moment that changed everything for me and took me down that direction and it still focuses me to this day. It's quite incredible. So yeah, that's definitely the song. Another one, it's Teenage Kicks is a great one because I always felt that kind of stole our thunder a little bit. We were a lot like the
yeah,
Undertones. We were
yeah,
sort of a little nondescript in terms of image and everything, but their song came out, it was the correct speed and sounded a little bit bigger and better than ours, you know. But
Yeah.
there have been sort of little forums on the internet saying which is the best song of 1979. Is it Kids Just Want to Dance or is it Teenage Kicks? You know, but I think we should finish with Anarchy then, because that's where it all began.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll stop recording now, Steve. Thanks so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, no problem, mate. I've enjoyed it. Yeah, yeah.
There we go.